do you make of that theory?
It's just not the case. The numbers don't show that. Does it exist? Yes. But it's a rare instance. In the same way, are there people who are Christian extremists who are radicalized in prison who might go on to do a terrorism act? Yes.
According to the National Institute of Corrections, violence due to prison radicalization by Muslims in the U.S. is a rare event, and there's little to no evidence it's happening. In fact, Nusor says many converts are attracted to the faith by observing how Muslim prisoners carry themselves.
They'll notice that that person's different. He's not falling into the same ruts of how other people might behave in prison. And so they ask them, and then he said, well, it's my Islam. My Islam teaches me about my character.
Anderson was released from prison in July after serving his full sentence. At his parole hearing, he says the chairman called him an exceptional inmate. What role do you think your faith in Islam played in you being portrayed that way? But now, outside of prison walls, he says his work is just beginning. I see you becoming emotional.
Yes.
What is it that's filling you with this emotion?
Because to be able to know where I came from, the person I was, the selfish person I was, the lives I ruined, the people I harmed, and now to be able to give a second chance. I believe God gave me a second chance to come out here to serve humanity, because the person life I took, he doesn't have a second chance. So I think I owe it to him. I owe it to his family. I owe it to his children to do something in my life.
What would little Christopher Anderson think about Muhammad Amin?
He would think, now you got it. Now you got it.
What did you get?
What it means to live. What it means to care.
Anderson now has a job with the Teba Foundation and is enjoying a quiet, prayerful life. Nusor told us in his 15 years of doing this, it has been rare for someone to denounce Islam once they leave prison. Evidence that he says shows it's not just a phase behind bars. Back to you in the studio.
Inshallah, we can have Sir Rami and Sheikh Amin join us later. Sorry about the gymnastics. We're missing a wire.
Should you wish to turn it off, you just press
Okay, and what time are we wrapping up?
Isha is at 8:40, so you have
About an hour? Okay, all right. You want to go first?
No, you go first. I think that's best.
What's that? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, everyone. Alhamdulillah, it's truly an honor to be here and to be invited in to share a little bit about our work here at Service. And I just have to say, as I was coming into the mosque, I noticed the halaqas that were going on. And it was really refreshing to see that, mashallah, to really see the youth from the community here now giving back and teaching, mashallah, Sarah, Muhammad, Yusuf, or not Yusuf, sorry, Ibrahim, Hafiz Ibrahim, everybody else that's working, serving the youth. It's really beautiful to see that and to see the all ages coming here to the masjid. So to jump right into the topic, the topic is faith, freedom, and what is it? Faith, freedom?
Second chance.
Faith, freedom, and a second chance. So I want to begin a little bit by sharing how did I get involved in teaching people who are in prison or formerly incarcerated. And it started about now 25 years ago. And in 1998, I started going overseas to West Africa, to the country of Mauritania, to study Islam, to study the Sharia, to study Arabic. And then on my visits home, I would meet people in the community, and just like there was halaqas going on here at the masjid, I would also be teaching people. I wanted to give back some of what I had been given. And one of the principles that we learn from zakat is that whatever Allah has given you, any blessing that Allah has given you, you give it back. You give a portion of it back. And the zakat of learning, the zakat of knowledge is what? Teaching. So teaching, you're giving out. If Allah blesses you with knowledge, The zakat of it is to give some back. So I started doing that, and I would teach different members of the community, and it just happened that Allah placed me in the path of people who had been formerly incarcerated. I wasn't going out to try to teach people who had been in prison. That's just what Allah had ordained. He put people in my path and put me in their path to where I started teaching them, and then they would tell me their stories of Islam. I remember one brother, I was teaching him in the year, it was in 2000, and he would ride his bike from Oakland down to the lower East Bay. My parents lived in Fremont, so I would come back to Fremont, and he would take the BART. He would ride his bike to the BART station and ride up to Oakland. And one time I said, I have my brother's car, it's a Jeep, I can give you a ride home. Where should I go? So from Fremont area, how would you get back to Oakland? What freeway would you take? 880 North, right? So he told me, he said, take 17 North. It used to be called 17 North. Now this is in circa 2000. And I just I didn't want to embarrass him, but I said, because it had not been called 17 North for about 25 years or so, about the time that he had been in prison. So when he went into prison, 880 North was 17 North. It's still, if you go all the way south, like to Santa Cruz, what is it? It's 17, right? So the whole thing used to be called 17. And it just struck me at the time, here's a person who went in and the whole world changed, and yet he comes back and he's not caught up with a lot of things. And I said, it's actually called 880. And he just kind of shrugged it off and continued on. That was one of my first experiences with teaching somebody who had been formerly incarcerated. And then one by one, more and more, I started teaching more brothers from the prison. And then I started meeting people who were very serious about their studies. And I wanted to teach them, not because they were Muslims in prison and I wanted to help them out, but because I saw that they were very serious students. And so one became 5, 5 became 10. And then myself and Nabil, who's over here, also co-founder of Thayba, we said, let's take this to the next level. And so in 2008, we started the Thayba Foundation. And at the time, I believe we had 80 students, 80. And now since then, we have served through the support of the community. So anybody who's made dua for us, supported us in any way, you have a portion of this reward. We have served nearly 15,000, 15,000 Muslims in prison across all 50 states in 1,000 prisons, delivering over 30,000 courses to them, in addition to our reentry services. Now, I don't want to talk about all of what we've been able to do. I want to talk a little bit about what I've learned in this time. And during this time, what I've seen is the power of Tawbah, and human change, the ability for people to change. We read the stories of the Sahaba, right? We read the stories of the Sahaba and where they were and then who they became afterwards. And we still see that to a certain extent in society, somebody that led a completely different lifestyle and then became Muslim. But in prisons here in the US, that story is by the tens of thousands. People who used to be murderers, who used to be thieves, who used to be drug dealers and drug traffickers and hurt people. And then they make a change to Islam and they completely change. They go through not only Tawbah, but a sincere Tawbah, what's called a Tawbatan Nasuha, a sincere Tawbah to where you would never imagine that this person was that person. It's like two completely different people. And so that's to see that happening and to see the power of Tawbah and how Allah can change a person and bring people's hearts together. I've met people who they told me, they said that before they were Muslim, in their gang lifestyle, like Bloods and Crips, they said, if we saw each other on the street, we would have, the immediate thought would have been, I need to kill that person. And they said, now we're Muslims. He said, we have the same, we share the same cell. We pray together. We go to Jum'ah together. We fast together. We greet each other. And no other program in society could do that. It was Islam that made that change. It was Islam that made that change. And that story of Tawbah is happening so often. So I've seen the power of change, and then also the power of potential, the potential of human beings. One of the hadith that I think about a lot in life, but also in this work at Taiba Foundation, is that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "An-nasu ma'adinun kama'adin al-dhahabi wal-fidda." People are like ores, like the ores of gold and silver. خيارهم في الجاهلية خيارهم في الإسلام. The best of them in Jahiliyyah, in the pre-Islamic days of ignorance, are the best of them in Islam if they gain understanding. If they gain true understanding, fiqh, not fiqh like how to pray, how to fast, that's a part of it, but to really understand who you are as a human being and where you fall in this earth, where your placement is in this earth, and your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so seeing that, like when we hear stories of, say, for example, Khalid bin Walid. When Khalid bin Walid, radiallahu anhu, when he was at Uhud, was he on our side? He wasn't. What was his main intention? What was he out to do? He was out there to slaughter Muslims. He wanted to slaughter as many Muslims as he could. He wanted to, the main prize of Khalid, what do you think in his mind as a warrior on that day of Uhud? What was his main prize, the main victory that he could get on that day? To kill the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then a few years later, he becomes Muslim. And now it's not Khalid bin Walid, the enemy of Islam, who was slaughtering Muslims. The charge around the Mount of Archers, who do you think did that? Khalid had an elite force of cavalry. And he was waiting. He saw that mountain, the archers, and this shows the strategy of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He told those archers, do not go down from that hill. And then they disobeyed the orders. They went down to the hill. As soon as Khalid saw that, he took his horsemen and he went around, and then he was able to flank the Muslims from behind. And then now Quraysh that were fleeing were able to turn around, and the Muslims are caught in the middle. That was Khalid. Now he becomes Muslim, and now he's, what do we call him? Not only radiallahu anhu, we say he is the Sayfullah, the sword of Allah, who then would fight over 100 battles for the Muslims, for Islam. Not only in the Arabian Peninsula, but with the Persians and with the Byzantines, the Romans, and so forth. So when you see that, when you see the power, how Allah can take somebody that was an adamant enemy of Islam, was so far from Islam, and then bring them back to Islam, that's the power of Tawbah and the potential. So Khalid was that silver or the gold even before that, even before he was Muslim. He just needed to be refined, and that gold needed to be brought out of who he was. And so that's what I see happening in the US prisons, in the stories by the thousands. Now, let me talk a little bit about that, about prisons. The US prison system, there's always been prisons, but this modern prison system that now we have, does anybody know how many prisons, how many people that we have incarcerated in the US through our tax dollars? Does anybody know? Close to 3 million people. Close to 3, there's some countries that don't even have that. The people in prison, 2.3 million. 2.3 million. And then those on probation and parole, if you look at everything, it gets close to 7 million people. It's a huge industry. The average prisoner in California, through our tax dollars, you know how much it costs to house one prisoner for 1 year? About $50,000. 40 to 50,000. That's if they're not at the maximum security prisons. The maximum security prisons is $500,000 to $1 million. And if they're at the medical facilities over here, because the taxpayers don't want to pay insurance for the prisoners, it's all out of pocket. The average cost for a prisoner in California at a medical facility, $500,000 of our tax dollars. Now, if you go to those prisons and you say, well, why don't, instead of we spend $500,000 why don't we put that into the school systems to prevent somebody from going into that lifestyle? That would be a different story. But how did we get there? It starts after the Civil War, right after slavery ended. Now this huge workforce that used to be there, 59% of the US economy before the Civil War was based on cotton. 59%, almost 60% of the United States economy was based on cotton. That the slave workforce, the free work that they had is gone. So what did they replace it with? Prisons. And so now for minor crimes, vagrancy, not being unemployed in some places was a crime. then you would go to prison. And then they had the leasing of convicts. They would lease out. So you as a farm owner could go to the prison and say, okay, lease me 100 prisoners. And now they're back out on the fields working those fields. So the US prison system has a direct correlation with the end of the Civil War and the end of slavery. But it only was about 300,000 up until 1980. And then with the wars on crime and the war on drugs, the Republicans, through their legislation, added 1 million prisoners. And then the Democrats, through Clinton, added another million prisoners. So now we have 2.3 million prisoners. So we as Muslims, and this is what I will end on, we as Muslims have a duty to benefit the lands that we live in. We as Muslims, wherever we are, we have to benefit the lands that we live in. Alhamdulillah, it's beautiful to see our masajid growing. It's beautiful to see our educational systems growing. Wallahi al-azim, when I heard the news about Service buying that building, I was overjoyed. And it's such a monumental thing for not only Service as a community, but all Muslim communities, not only in the Bay Area, California, and the rest of the US. For me, I see it as an opportunity when something came up, the community mobilized and was able, in the millions of dollars, millions, how much was it? 9 million? 9 million. So now I'm thinking, okay, what are our children and our grandchildren going to see? Then when properties that come up that are 50 million or 100 million, how are we going to mobilize to be able to do that? And so as we're looking at our resources in the community, we have a duty to help the societies that we live in. So yes, we build our masajid, yes, we serve ourselves, but we also have to say, what can we do to help the greater society? And one area that we should be really thinking is about the prisons in the US. Not only helping people who are in prison, because the majority of Muslims in prison converted to Islam in the prisons. In the prisons. They go into prison, not as Muslims, and then they find Islam. If you're familiar with the story of Malcolm X, he went on his journey to Islam, began in prison. I say began his journey because what he did in prison is he joined the Nation of Islam, which does not have the proper belief system of true Islam, but that was his first step into true Islam, but it began in prison. And so that transformation is happening, it continues to happen, and that's what we're doing through our foundation and with the support of the community. And so just like we have to support in any part of the society, we have to help the society heal in the prisons, both in changing the prison system. So as a voter, notice the legislation and read about legislation, read about crime bills and read about prison bills. I'm not a person that believes in abolishing prisons. I don't believe in the abolishing prisons completely. We do need prisons. There are some people that need to be in prisons, but not at the rate that it's happening now. We have one of our students who's also a good friend of Amin. He's also named Amin Rafiq. He spent over 20 years in prison for the non-violent possession of crack cocaine. What does that mean? Non-violent possession, meaning he had it, he was going to use it, he did not intend to sell it, because once you intend to sell it, it becomes another crime. If you have the drug possession in the process of a crime, a violent crime, that makes the crime even worse. But he had it on him, he had it, and he was arrested. As a 17-year-old, do you know what this country gave to him? 3 life sentences. 3 life sentences. And he spent 20 years in prison. So when we hear that injustice, we have to say, okay, we need to change that. We as Muslims, we need to be at the front of changing that system. So yes, we have to be concerned with the things that affect our community, our Muslim community directly, but we also have to be thinking about the people of the lands that we live in. And I'll end there and I'll turn it over to Ustad Amin. And I just want to share a little bit about how I came to know him about, what was it, about 2007? No, earlier, 2004?
We met 2005, off and on.
2005. A brother that we know, Brother Ansari. I don't know if any of you guys know Ansari Greenwell. MashaAllah, if you do, you know how animated he is and very passionate. And so he came up and he spent 13 years in prison. Also, he became Muslim in prison, and he's the one who actually got me connected to a lot of very serious students behind bars. And so he came up to me and he said, Rami, if you want a serious student, you have to start teaching Amin. And so I started taking his phone calls. We started corresponding, started sending him material. And at that time, you had spent probably about 17 years so far in prison.
Yeah, about that.
About
Yeah,
17
that.
years. And then he was released last year after 33 and a half years in prison. And the first time that I saw him in person was at ISNA last year. He flew out there and we flew out to meet him. And it was the first time I met him in person after teaching him by phone for 17 years. And now, alhamdulillah, he's part of the Taiba team. He's teaching. He's doing a lot of support of our students by phone. And as was read in the biography, we just published his commentary on the Matharat al-Qulub, the purifier of the hearts. And that took you about three years while you were in prison?
2017 to 2020.
Yeah, so about 3 years. He wrote it while he was in prison. He wrote it while he was in prison. And this is what I like to let people know, that it's not just people becoming Muslim in prison and having a presence within the prisons, but it's also that there's scholarship being produced here, in the prison system. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ustad Amin.
Bismillah. We can all go home now, because how can you follow that? So, assalamu alaikum. First of all, I want to thank you for inviting me out here to spend some time with you and share our story and tell you about the work that Taiba Foundation is doing. For me, it's really about Taiba Foundation. It's not about me. It's not about any individual stories. About Taiba, the work that Taiba Foundation is doing for the brothers and sisters who are incarcerated. When he was talking about Khalid bin Walid, I was thinking of Umar ibn Khattab, and one of our teachers said that, we quoted that Imam Qurtubi said that Umar ibn Khattab was a beloved of Allah even when he was worshiping idols at the Kaaba. And that disturbed some people because they were looking from the outward, where Imam Qurtubi was looking from the haqiqah, the reality. And look who Umar came, the person that he became. So this is why he made that statement. You don't know what a person may become. You may see him today as a dope dealer, a pimp, or a prostitute, but you don't know what Allah has in store for that person. And one of the things that Malcolm X said was that there's no shame in once being a pimp, a drug dealer, a prostitute, a murderer. The shame is to remain that way. That's where the shame is at. So I stand before you, I sit before you today, not being ashamed of who I once was. I'm humbled that Allah allowed me to be here today, bearing this faith, talking about this faith, teaching this faith, calling people to the faith, informing people about the faith. I was just telling Sheikh Rami the other day, my brother, he's a Baptist minister, and he texted me the other day, and he said to me, you know what, man? He said, you got me wanting to be a Muslim now. I wanted to take my Shahada. I want you to give me time. I want you to teach me. And he said, all that came from is just watching me. I never once tried to call him to Islam or tell him about Islam. He just watched me. We went for a weekend together, Myrtle Beach. And that whole weekend, he just sat back and watched how I dealt with people, how I encountered people, how no matter where we were at, I was going to make my prayer. We was driving one morning. I said, pull over. I got the officer Salat. And he was amazed by how I was so dedicated. He works in prisons. He's a prison guard. And he said, he sees people go home every day and they come back. But he said, here's my little brother. I'm watching him, how this religion, how Taiba Foundation has affected his life. When I became Muslim, when people normally go to prison, they get in trouble, the first thing they do, they fall to the faith of their parents, the one that they were raised in. I was a Christian. So, whenever I got in trouble, I always inclined to faith. So for some reason, I always loved faith because I was brought up in the church. My mother sent me to private school, Christian school. She was a Baptist minister. So I was always inclined to that. But I ran across a brother, and he was just following the Sunni. He was in the Nation of Islam, and he started practicing the Sunnah. So he started debating me. And while he was debating me, he could not, because I was a Christian, he was trying to debate me from the Bible, he could not win. So, and plus I had my mother on my side as well. I can go to the phone and ask her a question. But he gave me this book called Muslim Christian Dialogue, and I read it. And the book, it impacted me so much that even my mother couldn't even deal with this book. And so one night I sat on my bed, and I didn't know at the time I was making istikhara. And I said, oh God, Jesus, Allah, whoever you call yourself, if you want me to be Christian, allow me to remain Christian. If you want me to be Muslim, then make me Muslim. The next morning I woke up, I had no doubt that I wanted to become Muslim. I had no doubt about that I wanted to be Muslim. I had no problems with the concept of Jesus in Islam. So from there, I became Muslim. And I don't have much time, and we can't go through everything I went through, but I can't sit up here and not talk about some of the people who affected my life. One was a brother named Abdul Alim. And then next it was, I came and encountered, I remember I was responsible for ordering the tapes for the chaplain department. And I asked the brother, I said, man, pick out a couple scholars for me to order. And he picked out 5. One was Bilal Phillips, Abdul Hakim Quick, Siraj Wahaj, and Ahmadida. And then it was this little white guy. I didn't know who he was, right? And I said, who's this white guy? So I said, okay. So I listened to the first 4. And then I got to where I had no other choice but to listen to this little white guy. And I said, let me check him out. And this white guy was Sheikh Hamza Youssef. And when I listened to him, it was like, everything became clear to me. I said, I need to be following this guy. So that's how I originally came in contact with him. I reached out to Sheikh Hamza. He wrote me back. And in fact, this 3 weeks ago, I met him for the first time, and I presented him the letter that he wrote me over 25 years ago. And we laughed about it when I called him the little white guy. But then I met Usama Cannon. And then from there was Ansari, who, when I talked with him on the phone immediately, the first day I met him on the phone, he said, listen, he said, he didn't ask me what was my race, what I was locked up for. He says, Akhi, here's my number to my home. Call me. Whatever you need, I got you. And from that point on, he started sending me a lot of material that him and Sheikh Selak was doing at the time. And then around 2006, 2007, that's when we made the connection to where we started studying together. And from there, we arrived to this point. But what I want to ask you all in the audience, and I'm not surprised, and I understand why this room is not filled up with people, but eventually people will come to know why it's a need to support organizations like Tabor Foundation, reaching into the prison system and assisting our brothers and sisters. Because one of the things I want to tell you is that one day these individuals are going to be out like me. I'm out, right? And I come into your masjid. I just gave khutbah here a couple weeks ago, right? And many of you wouldn't even knew I was in prison if I didn't say something, if I didn't mention it on the khutbah, And I normally, when I talk with people for a minute, I talk with them for a while, and then after I tell them I was in prison, they're like, I can't believe you was ever in prison, right? But how did that happen? So one thing I want to tell you is that these men and women are coming home, and they're going to be your neighbors. They're going to be coming in your masjids. And one day, your son or your daughter may bring one of them home talking about they want to marry this individual. So you have an opportunity right now, not to wait for the individual to come home, but you have an opportunity to play a part in shaping and molding the mind of these men and women, that you can help produce human beings, help them. Like I said in that video, it was in prison that I learned that I realized I didn't have my humanity. I had lost my humanity. And it was in prison that I recovered my humanity, but it wasn't just the prison system that helped me recover my humanity. It was the tools that were in the prison, and it was Islam that took those tools and put them in the proper perspective for me. But there was someone who helped me put those tools. For example, you can have a wrench or a hammer to assemble something, but if you don't have no instructions or instructors to go with it, then it's going to be quite difficult for you. And that's what Tabor Foundation serves for the community of brothers and sisters in prison. They help us learn how to take the deen, how to take this faith and put it in a proper perspective, how to make things easy and keep them from being difficult, right? So if you didn't see this video of me talking about my background, how many of you would have thought that hearing about me doing 33 and a half years, he must have came from a broken home? How many, be honest, how many would have thought that I came from a broken home, that my father wasn't there, that there was alcohol and drugs in the household? If you I honestly ask you, you say, man, he did 33 and a half years. Well, he came from a broken home. That's why. The father wasn't in the home. But if you say, I came from a home where the mother was a Baptist minister and my father was there. I went to private school. I went on ski trips. My mother put me in gymnastics class. She put me all types of programs. All the new things that came out, I was the first in the neighborhood to have them. So I came from a good home. And the reason I'm saying this to you, because I want you to understand one thing. If you don't get anything else, don't think it can't happen to your kid. Don't say, not my child. It can't happen to my child, because we have a good home. We have good jobs. We give them a great education. Especially in this time with this social media, the access that children have to social media today. how they can be duped and tricked. You know how many brothers and sisters I have run across in the prison system who are from Pakistani, I want to make sure I say that correctly, Pakistani, or because I was doing a retreat up there with some brothers in Minnesota, and I called them Somalians. They said, no, Akhi, Somali. And I was with the brother here, and I called Afghan. He said, no, Akhi, we don't say Afghani. So I don't want to offend anyone. But brothers who are not born of this, they're maybe second, third generation into this country, and they was tricked over social media to come and do something crazy, entrapped. They got into entrapment, right? They was on a computer with somebody, and they talked them into coming across seas and doing something harmful. And his parents, and many of the parents didn't even know that their children were up in the room on the computers on social media talking with an FBI agent, thinking they're talking to a woman that they're going to marry, and she's tricking him and believing that she's going to marry him, and they're going to do some type of suicide bombing. There's so many I've met like that. So don't think that it can't happen to you. Another thing I want to tell you is that the prison system is not like it was 100 years ago. It's not where people are just sitting around, they're not doing anything, 30 years hard labor. They can't sentence you like that anymore. Now when you're in prison, there's many opportunities. It's up to you to take advantage of the opportunity. And in prison, while I was there, I spent many of my years, one thing I would want to do is educate myself secularly, but also from sacred knowledge. So I always made sure I had myself in a position where I was around people, because I believe that the environment is not only a product, can be a product of you not just being a product of the environment. So for example, you may have a group of guys over here, and they may be doing gambling, selling drugs, using drugs. That's the environment they're creating for themselves in prison. But everybody in prison is not living like that. I wasn't living like that. So what I want to tell you that there's a lot of men and women in there who's actually trying to change their life, and organizations like Table Foundation are facilitating this for us. It's teaching us how to take the text and making it applicable to our lives in prison. In prison, I was teaching a parenting class. I was teaching sexual transmitted disease class. I was teaching drug classes. I was working in the hospital, sewing people up, putting casts on. I was working in education, teaching GED. I was doing it. These opportunities were there for me, but it was up for me to take the initiative to take advantage of these opportunities that were being presented. So I want you to understand something, that we're not just sitting in prison, not doing anything with our life. We're taking advantage of the opportunities. Now we need those same opportunities when we come out here. That someone say, okay, listen, I'm gonna give you an opportunity, I'm gonna give you a chance. But now how do we go about doing that? You just can't say, okay, like I tell brothers and sisters, don't reach out to a community once you 3 weeks away from coming home. Because they're gonna let you come home and they're gonna allow you to come into the masjid and off salat. But don't think they're gonna open their pocketbooks up to you. Don't think they're gonna open their door, because they don't know you. You know, the trust had to be established. So, and also I tell the communities, don't do a reach out, do a reach in. Start establishing somebody in this community to work along with Taylor Foundation, or work along with some organizations who reach it into the prison. And what you do, you start creating a relationship with those men and women who are inside. So this way you're building a track record on them. See, me and him developed a relationship over a year. So he had a track record on me. So when I came home, he had no problem with allowing me to go visit his 80-year-old mother by myself, though I took this brother with me because of dad purposes, right? But he had that trust. Why? Because we were developing that relationship. So this is what I'm asking. I'm here to ask the brothers and sisters at this community that you establish somebody here that's doing a reach in. Also, we can also use your assistance at Taylor Foundation in any kind of way that you want it. We have letters that need to be answered sometime. We have, during Ramadan, we have a program where we provide students with letters from people in the communities, letting them know that there are people out here who care about them. So inshallah, there's a lot more I can talk about. I don't like to talk about the horrors in prison. I don't think that don't serve any purpose. Telling you about all the type of stupid stuff that goes in prison, that serves no purpose. But for the youth, you know, prison is not a cool thing, right? Don't let nobody on social media make you think that prison is cool. The rap lyrics and all that type of stuff, most of those guys that's be rapping and talking about this stuff, they didn't live that life. They don't know anything about that life. They're trying to convince you to live that life and to buy their record. But what y'all had going on here tonight, as the Sheikh said, was very beautiful to come in and see the brothers and sisters having the Holocaust teaching and stuff like that. That's what's cool. You know, I always say, if I can go back and do it again, mashallah ta'ala, I would love to be in your position. But, you know, this is what Allah has decreed for me, mashallah, and I don't complain on the outcome of my life. You know, for a believer, everything is good. It's higher than everything. When it's a hardship, it's good. And when it's prosperity, it's good. So inshallah, I think that right now they might want to answer questions.
Yeah, maybe ask some questions.
Because if not, I'll keep on talking.
Yeah. Take some questions from the audience and then just keep the conversation going. Anything like, as we're talking, what's coming to mind? Like, could be a statement, question. Brother Masood right there, yeah.
Thank you very much for coming here tonight. Can you guys tell us what you need, how we can help you guys?
Well, I would say the main thing is to have tawajjuh. Tawajjuh is to turn yourselves towards something, to notice something, and to notice that there's a need in the prisons, and the Muslims, we have to be there. So I'm gonna start big picture level. Before I could say, and I know Nabil's our development director, and like there's a donate button on the website, and please do that, and know that the impact can be huge. About 10 years ago, maybe 12, we did a fundraiser in the community, and we mentioned there was a brother who was going up for parole. He had spent almost 30 years in prison, and we needed to hire a lawyer to represent him. We got, at the time, $2,500. That freed him from prison. $2,500. More recently, we had somebody who spent 32 years in prison here in California. And the way the prison system works, it's you get a sentence like 15 to life, 20 to life, 25 to life, 30 to life. So you have a life sentence, but you might have the opportunity to get out. They say, if you do all these good things and you change your life, we promise for you to leave prison. Well, they kept denying him and denying him and denying him. And then they finally, it was Islamophobia. Oh, it's not that your Islam is making you a better person. You're a threat to society, because what are you going to do? Are you going to do some of those things that the terrorists do? They actually mentioned that at the parole hearing. So we said, okay, we need to hire a lawyer. $4,000. He's out of prison after 32 years. So we can, where it said, I think it said faith, freedom, and a second chance. That freedom portion. There are people who, when they go up for parole, it's because of their Islam that the parole board will say, oh, wow, you've changed your life. You're like, you said, they told you, you're a model citizen, right?
Exceptional.
Exceptional, yeah.
Exceptional.
And so they'll let people out. So there is a huge impact. And then even if a person doesn't get out, the fact that they have a connection to the community and that they know that there's people outside that care about them and that are supporting them, it's huge. It helps them keep going. And we hear this a lot. They see the Christians from the Christian communities and the prison ministry communities coming in all the time. Didn't you see that?
Yes.
Any prison, you're going to see the Christians come in. And then the question becomes,
yeah, go ahead.
Where are the Muslims? I was at an Eid celebration at a prison here in California near Fresno, near Avenal. If you're ever going down Highway 5, they ever notice like Avenal State Prison, Pleasant Valley State Prison? We used to call it Not So Pleasant Valley, because it's called, imagine being in a prison that's called Pleasant Valley Prison. Anyway, I went to a Eid gathering at Pleasant Valley, and the Eid meal was sponsored by a church in Santa Cruz. And so we have to be there to be, to support in the community and to focus on that. I'll end with this. You asked about what can we do. So the first thing is just be concerned with it and know, like on our chart over there, or not the chart, the what's it called? I've reached Ammo status, so I can do this kind of stuff. What is that? Like banner. Thank you. Well, you know what I think. The banner over there, Ayah 8 of chapter 76. ويطعمون الطعام على حبه مسكينا ويتيما وأسيرا. The description of the believers is that they feed the poor, the orphan, and the prisoner. And this was originally about the prisoners of Badr. Imagine the Quraysh that came out to kill the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Sahaba. When they were taken prisoners, Allah said, feed them. And the hadith, the sunnah of the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam clarifies that. He says, feed them before you feed your families, and feed them the best of the food. And that's what they used to do. That's the prisoners. And so the Mufassirin say, if this is how we're commanded to treat our non-Muslim prisoners, what do you think about the Muslims in prison? And there's a brother, does anybody know Tariq Khanzada? Anybody know him? He was from the South Bay community. He reached out to us. He was part of ICNA. Have you ever seen Mercy on Wheels, the ICNA Mercy on Wheels project? They renovated like a food truck and started doing food distribution with that. He came to us at Taiba Foundation. He said, I work with ICNA, and we have the Qurbani, the Udhiyah program, and I would like to take a lot of that from the Qurbani and deliver it into the prison. Can Taiba help facilitate? And I said, we can. And he told me, he said, I have fulfilled every command in the Quran except feeding the prisoner. So with ICNA and Taiba, we worked together and we got food into the prisons for the Eid. We had, and then he said, okay, let's take this program to another level. We had a meeting on a Sunday. Wednesday night, I get an email from ISEB, Janazah for Brother Tariq Khanzada.
Oh, inshallah.
And I said, wait a minute. How? I just spoke to him on Sunday. We're doing this project. He went to his first grandchild. He held his first grandchild at a hospital in the South Bay and was going home on 237, stopped to help a stranded motorist, and a drunk driver hit him. Killed on impact. And that was a few days after our next meeting. But it's almost like he said, I fulfilled every command in the Quran except for feed the prisoner. And then he's taken as a shaheed. I mentioned that story at a masjid, and somebody came up to me and he said, I'll add to the story. And this is not a story. This actually happened. He's buried in 5 pillars. If you're walking through there, when you come to Tariq Khanzada, this is his story. He said it was about the time of Hajj. And he asked the person going on Hajj, he said, make 5 du'as for me. And one of the du'as was that Allah takes me out of this world as a shaheed. And we know that if a person dies on impact of something, that's one of the categories of being a shaheed. Not the shaheed of the battlefield, but there's other shuhada as well. So that's what you asked, how can we help Taiba? In addition to donate on the website and help, and there's an impact there. But it's really just to change the mindset to say, okay, help Gaza, absolutely. Help Palestine, absolutely. That's number 1 in our minds. And help Sudan, and help Yemen, and help the Rohingya, and help Pakistan, and help the victims of the flood, and the victims of the earthquakes in Afghanistan, the earthquakes, everything. We have to diversify our portfolio and the prisoners.
I want to say something to that. The fact is that maybe 80 to 90% of the Muslim brothers and sisters are in prison. You may look at, well, they committed those crimes and they did that to themselves. But 80 to 90% of those weren't Muslim when they entered prison. They were not Muslim when they entered prison. They became Muslim after entering prison. So the thing you were talking about, how could you help? One of the things is that the first and foremost thing we need to remember is to always be sincere in whatever you're going to do when you're talking about the incarcerated Muslim man or woman. If you're going to visit them or if you're going to try to do some volunteer work, be sincere in whatever you're going to do with them. Because if you're not sincere with them, they're going to read you immediately and they're going to shut down on you. Don't tell them something you're going to do and you don't do it. That's one of the things that we find a lot of people tell us over the years, that they're going to do this and they're going to do that. They're going to get this program, they're going to that program. They never did it. And then here Sheikh Rami comes with Taiba Foundation. All right. Also, these brothers and sisters are going to give back so much more. They're going to give back more than what you're giving. There's a big return. And I'll give you an example of one brother. How many of you know the founder of Lamps of Light, Tabari? You see the work that he's doing, right? Amazing work, right? Very knowledgeable, isn't he? He can articulate himself very well, can't he? He knows a lot about what he's talking about, right? Helping a lot of people, right? You think he got all that from going to a 4-year college? What he learned and what he's doing, he's been practicing all that in prison. The years he spent in prison, shaping and defining and doing everything, working. That's the work that we do. When we're in prison, many of us who are acting imams in prison, some brothers like him and myself, We're doing work of social workers. We're doing work of psychologists. We're doing work. We're being father to men. We're doing all of that along with running a community inside of prison. You think running a community out here is something? Try to run a community in prison when you got maybe 300 Muslims up under you, and half of them are into nonsense. Every morning you wake up, there's an issue. Not even that many. Let's just take maybe 50. Every morning you wake up, there's an issue. You got to go to the rec yard and deal with it. Somebody's about to stab somebody, you know? And then you're trying to prepare for Jumu'ah service. You're trying to teach class and to maintain your own studies at the same time. So what I'm trying to tell you is that what you give, you're going to get a greater return. One, return from Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. But what they're coming out, what they're offering you, the knowledge and the wisdom they have, they're bringing back to these communities, how they can help the youth. Not just the youth, but how they can help our elders as well. Because there's many who are in prison, you know, I have men who are in prison who are older than me. They looked at me as a father. They look at Tabari as a father, look at Amin as a father, right? But I don't take the credit, the credit goes back to who? Allah Azza wa Jalla first and foremost. But what was the tool that Allah used to help develop us in this way? Table Foundation. And one thing I want to point out about Sheikh Rami, I always say this about him, and we show our gratitude to Sheikh Nabil and the rest of the Table Family Foundation staff. Sheikh Rami, before there was a Table Foundation, him and I had a relationship. But Sheikh Rami, one of the things why the students of Table Foundation love him so much and they care so much about him is because he didn't just reach into prison and give us a hand. He reached into prison and put his arms around us. That's what he did. So I always got to bring that up. You know, takbir. Come on, I know I get a better thing at the football game than that. Takbir. 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 There you go. I mean, I know y'all be at the games, soccer game, screaming, and your wife like, what's going on? Somebody fighting? You know? He said, takbir. Everybody, assalamu alaikum, akhi. Alaykum assalam. Oh, it's that, you know? No, but on a serious note, you know, I just wanted to, you know, acknowledge him for that. I always try to, you know, because he has done so much for us men and women who are incarcerated and who are formerly incarcerated and who are still incarcerated, inshallah ta'ala.
Thank you for mentioning that. And what I always like to mention or remind myself is that I can only do this work from the support of the community. So to everybody watching at home, to everybody supporting over the years, Taiba Foundation, the staff, everybody, thank you for allowing us to do this work.
No more questions?
Jazakallah khair for the work, you know. And just curious, because, you know, the work you have done, you know, and is the current prison system kind of more supportive of your work or making it easy for you guys, or no change?
You go ahead. The prison system, it depends. Like there are staff who are really trying. I mean, there are staff in the prison system who are just trying to help you in as a person, right? Then there's those who chaplains, like real Christian chaplains, who actually really try to help the Muslims more than the Muslim chaplains. Yeah. We find that. So there's some in certain states, you know, you have, you know, the mega type people who like try to put up a fight and make it difficult for us. But then you have those institutions, they're trying to facilitate it for us. As long as we, you know, first you got to remember in prison, security overrides everything. Security first. So they want to make sure things are done right. No backdoor stuff, no around. They want everything because in the prison system now, the way drugs come in is coming in through colored paper. You know, when in prison, there are a lot of guys who sit around and just spend all day trying to figure out a way how to. I was speaking. He said he would spend all. It's okay. Who spend all day trying to figure out a way of how to get over. And I like to give this example real quick if I can, Sheikh. Yeah. In prison, we have like 3 types of prisoners, okay? You have the one who's an inmate. They're all inmate in label, right? So you have the one who's an inmate in label, but he's an inmate in principle. And this is the one who can function inside a prison environment. As long as he's in a controlled environment, he can function really good, all right? He's one who, he conforms. Then you have the second one who's an inmate in label, but he's a convict in principle, right? He's always trying to manipulate. He's always trying to get over it. He'll conform in order to stay out of trouble or try to get some benefit. But then you have that third person that we want people to move to, is the one who's inmate and labeled, but he's a person who's transforming. He's reforming himself, and that takes place here. All right. So getting back to your question, there are those individuals in the prison system who try to manipulate the institution, rules, and regulations that make it difficult for us trying to get the material into the brothers and sisters, and it makes it difficult for the staff to do their jobs. And so it's like what you call a group punishment, because one person mess up, it's going to punish everybody, you know? So overall, the question you're asking, are they making it difficult? It depends on what institution it is. Florida, you know what Florida is, mega state. So they make it very difficult. Like we send material in with Arabic and English, right? They say it's a code they can't understand. Well, you got the English right there. But if you send a Spanish book in, a French book in, it comes right in. And we having that problem right now in Florida with some brothers and sisters. A brother ordered a Heinz Ware dictionary and the Medina Arabic course, and they told him it's a code. They can't understand it. But then another brother, another non-Muslim, ordered a Spanish grammar book and a Spanish dictionary, and they allowed it to come in. So these are the problems you have. And they always have staff at institutions who can read Arabic, right? But they'll act like, oh, no, we don't at certain institutions. But, you know, overall, we have a good response from a lot of the staff there. And at the same time, we have some who are not that responsive, who are really trying to create an obstacle. But you got to be able to, like, you know, that's why it's good to have people on our staff who've been on both sides of the fence, like myself, because he can be speaking to someone and he can say, well, listen, this guy just told me this, and I can immediately tell him, no, he's running game, or no, he's sincere, and this is what's going on, you know? So, did I answer your question?
Yes.
Thank you.
While we're waiting for the other question, one thing another thing that I've learned over these almost, more than 2 decades with Muslims who were in the prison or formerly incarcerated, is that to understand, Ustad Amin was talking about the 3 types of prisoners and the people, you know, the different mindsets. And I've spent a lot of time, because of my work in the prison and being introduced to this concept of what's called criminal thinking. And one of the methods that they use to try to help people change is not only get them off of their addiction, for example, because there are people who can maintain an addiction but not do anything illegal. Are there people out there who drink alcohol on a regular basis, but they never break a law and they never go to prison? But are they in an addiction? Yes. And so there's another thing too. Are there people who, so what's the difference between a person who drinks alcohol and does not commit a crime, even though to us as Muslims, drinking alcohol is a crime, but by the standards of societies, they're not committing a crime, so they're not in prison. And so how does that person stay out of prison, and how does somebody else, what is the thinking process that allows a person to commit a crime? And so there's a whole science behind looking at criminal thinking patterns. When I started looking at this, one of the things that came to my mind was an ayah in the Quran where Allah says that one of the things that the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam is going to clarify for us is sabil al-mujrimeen, the path of the criminal. Sabil al-mujrimeen. This is what it says in the Quran, sabil al-mujrimeen, the path of the criminal. And so in our mind as Muslims, what is the greatest crime that a person could commit? Kufr, right? So we have to think about not that crime is somebody in prison. Our definition of what a crime is based on Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What has Allah in His hudud clarified to us? This is a crime and something else is not a crime. And so if a person transgresses that, the process to go through that, to do that action is the path of the criminals. And so don't think that criminals are only behind bars. Don't think for a moment that criminals are only behind bars. There are people that walk into our communities. There are people that come into our spaces that have criminal thinking. It's just that they have not done anything illegal as defined by the state. Are there people who in the medical industry do things that are illegal, or so I should say do things that are haram? Yeah. Are there people in the finance world that do things that are haram, but they're not doing something illegal by societal standards? And so that person, is that person a criminal? For us, when we use the Quran and Sunnah as the scale, we say, yeah, that person is in a state of criminal thinking. Or I'll make it even more realistic or more applicable to most people. The process that causes a person to cheat on a test or to lie on a resume or to lie in an interview for a job, the process of thinking that they go through is the same process that causes a person to kill or to murder or to do to sell drugs, all of those other things that are illegal. Does that make sense? Same thinking. When you break it down, if you talk to the people that cheat on tests, cheat on college applications, cheat on job applications, lie in interviews, the same thinking process is the same exact thinking process that the people who are in prison now. So that's another thing that we can think about.
I think you got a question right
You
there.
got a question? And this will probably be the last question because Aisha is in 8 minutes, I believe.
Jazakallah khair for the talk. Ustaz Amin, I was wondering where we can find your commentary on the Al-Fatah Qulub, and if you're working on any other books. And then another question I have for both of you guys in regards to your experience working in different prisons. I just moved from the DC area, and I used to give some khutbahs in the prison there and was working with some of the brothers there. And one of the things that I saw that was a little challenging there was like the inter-Muslim dynamics. Like, you know, I know even within our own Muslim community, we have like the politics of like Sufi, Wahhabi, and all that stuff. And so I saw that even like within the prison too, like there seems to be a very strong presence of like the what's called the Salaf, the Wahhabiyya, you know, thought process there. And so just trying to be very diplomatic and like working with people. And so I was wondering, like, what have you guys seen in your experience and how you guys try to sort of navigate those politics?
When I first became Muslim, I was Salafi. If you didn't have a beard, I didn't look at you. If your pants wasn't high enough, I had an issue with you. So I had that type of thinking. But as I told you, I came in contact with Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, his material, and it like really enlightened me on, you know, making the path of paradise broad, not narrow. And then coming into learning, studying. I think what's going on now in the prison system is that people are having access now to how to study properly, the correct way, how to take knowledge. So it's breaking down a lot of that stuff. Mainly in that part of the country, the northeast part of the country is really a Salafi hub, really Philadelphia. I'm not saying that they're not Muslim, they're Muslims. And a lot of guys in prison who follow that minhaj, a lot of them have a misunderstanding of that minhaj. A lot of them are very uneducated. I was one of them. So we do have that politics in the federal systems. It's a really strong hold because most of the imams who were first came into the prison systems as chaplains. They studied across seas in Saudi Arabia, and they came back and they brought that minhaj. But you find many of them to be balanced though, and try to give a correct understanding. Some of them very harsh, but how we deal with it is we offer to whoever wants to take our course, and we try to provide them with the proper education on the differences of opinion, things of this sort. So like we have you start off with an essential program, just giving you a basic foundation, your Farad Ayn and stuff like that. Then we move you into a 100 series where you start to get introduced into what we talk about, like particular schools of fiqh and stuff like that. We're coming out with a new text called Fiqh 99 that really gets into some basic principles in that area before they move into a 100 series. So this is what we're offering. And a lot of people are starting to say, okay, listen, I want to study with Taylor Foundation. Because now I'm starting to understand that even if I pray with my hands on the side, or if I pray with my hands, he prays with hand, the prayer is still sound. You know, I'm getting to understand. I remember one time I was with a brother and he came to me. He said, brother, the brother told me my Jummah service, my Jummah prayer was invalid because I didn't wash my mouth. And I went to the dentist and the dentist told me I couldn't put water in my mouth, right? So as we start to sit down and explain to him, you know, about the mouth and about the farts, you know, everything the Prophet Muhammad did was his sunnah. But now in his sunnah, what is far? What is sunnah mu'akkada? What is sunnah mughayru mu'akkada? They get to start to understand these different this terminology and how these things apply. Their approach is different. They become a less, you know, difficulty. One principle I like a lot also fiqh is difficulty facilitate ease, you know, and we're in a controlled environment. So now the approach is starting to be different. So this is what drawing people, you know, they're leaving that particular type of thinking and saying, you know what, I want to study with Taylor Foundation. And also we're offering a proper approach, a healthy approach to what tasawwuf is, all right? Because now Sufism and tasawwuf is everything it was originally not meant to be. I mean, it's everything that you find out, this is not tasawwuf, this is not Sufism. What you see these people doing and stuff like that. So now we're starting to correct people understanding what is tasawwuf, what is Sufism. You know, all of it is predicated upon the Quran and Sunnah, right? Right? You cannot practice dhikr without understanding how the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and his Sahaba did it, you know, and the various type of dhikrs he did, and you know, things of this sort. So with the process that what we're offering to the men and women who are incarcerated, they're getting a better understanding of how to approach these matters. So we're now in these shackles of narrow type of thinking, my way or the highway, all this. Because I was one of those individuals, bidah haram, bidah haram, bidah haram, you know? You just love to say haram, 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 haram. We used to love saying that, you know? So I hope I answered your question, man. And I want to say one more thing to you, brothers, okay? I want you to remember this. I used to always tell the African-American officers in prison, I used to always tell them this. Just because you're police, you're a correctional officer, don't never think that you can't be here. You mess up one time and see what happened to you. Because if you're a non-Anglo-Saxon human being, they call me, you know, the N-word. You'll call the sand in. You mess up one time and see what happens. So don't ever think, well, that ain't gonna never happen to me. You never know what a law may take you through, right? To bring you back to this point, to where you remember, you know, this day and say, man, I remember that brother telling me this. Now I'm here, you know. So don't get it. Saying that we say in the streets, don't get it twisted, all right?
So, I think that was the last question. It's just in 2 minutes. My name is Sean. Many of you know